The greatest regeneration you didn't know you needed in your life. This is John from the MTG Thoughtcast with a Precon Mash-up for you today. If you enjoy these types of videos that we publish, please give us a like and subscribe for more deck techs like these. And this, as mentioned, is the Precon Mash-up, and as you have probably inferred, we're Doctor Who themed today. I don't know anything about Doctor Who. That's the joke. Welcome to the Precon Mash-up. Today we have something a bit more off the rails as we have done before with Precon Mashups. This is taking a Commander idea, but the Precon that we are going to be doing is still the mashup idea as we've done before, of taking a pile of pre-constructed decks already made and jamming them together and seeing what's the best combination and pile that we can create with it. The deck we are running with today is actually going to be using some of the secret Lair cards that came out during the run of Doctor Who Precons, Doctor Who Commander stuff, excuse me, but at the Precons at the same time. Our commanders of this deck is a partner pair of the 14th Doctor and Rose Noble. These two were mechanically unique cards exclusive to one of the Doctor Who secret Lairs, and essentially what they want to do is play a variety of Doctors that the 14th is able to become a copy of. And then Rose Noble is going to be drawing us cards as we cast these cards that say that they are Doctors or Doctor's Companions. So that's the strategy we're going to be building with today. The backbone of this deck then, apart from these two cards and one other included in the 98 that we'll get to in a minute, is going to be the Doctor Who Precon Commanders as they were. No other outside help of cards of any kind. That's how we do it here at the Precon Mash-up. But instead of just two decks together, we have all four of them coming together in one big compilation of the greatest wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey shenanigans you've ever known. The combination of all of these precons allows us to play all of the available Doctors that were included amongst all of these decks. That is going to be the numbered versions from 1 all the way to 13. And then War Doctor and Fugitive Doctor. They also fit the bill of these as well. The other addition one that we were talking about before is that also from the secret Lair that 14th and Rose Noble were a part of, we do have the 15th Doctor. He was also a card that was in there as well. So in total, we have 17 Doctors in the deck itself, plus the 14th in our command zone, who then becomes a copy of a Doctor whenever we cast him. And that is kind of the backbone of what we are looking to do out of this deck. The synergy that we are looking to do with these cards then is we're going to be using the backbone skeleton of the Blast from the Past deck to make this a historic themes, a historic matters build. That deck itself was already green, white, blue in its build, but with the 14th Doctor, we get to add red into this as well, and this allows us to pull all of these Doctor cards and some of the companions from the assorted precons into basically Bant plus red historic themes. Historic, as a reminder, is cards that are artifacts, legendaries, or sagas, and legendaries is going to be the big important part of that historic, but in case it ever does come up on casting other types of cards like sagas or artifacts, those types of cards are in here as well. So as you would expect with historic being our theme, Blast from the Past is going to be the central core of what this deck is looking to offer, but we get the pieces of red from both Paradox Power and Timey Wimey. Masters of Evil does not add too much into this build itself other than some mana fixing and some removal, but we will cross that bridge as we go down the list here. Of our two commanders we have, it's probably safe to say that Rose Noble herself is going to be one you're gonna want to get down more frequently than the 14th himself. Rose giving you a constant flow of card draw as we cast these Doctors. She does also give you card draw off of casting the Doctor's companion cards, which we are including a few of those in here as well, the ones that help us benefit this whole historic themes. So ones like Donna Noble, Jamie McCrimmon, and Tegan Jovanka, all of these care about combat-related features in some capacity. Ones like Jamie, getting himself bigger and naturally coming with trample as you cast historic spells, Donna allowing you to fling back damage as yours is potentially being blocked, and Tegan offering indestructible to a historic permanent as it goes to combat. The best companion, though, that we are running in here is going to be Clara Oswald, a colorless costing one, so your mana fixing isn't necessarily important when it comes to casting her, and she allows any triggers of our doctors to go a second time, being a panharmonicon for our doctors. And as described, we are playing all of the doctors in here, but we do have some particular standout ones. The fourth probably being one of the strongest, as he was one of the face commanders of the Blast from the Past deck himself. His synergy with historic cards itself is tremendous card advantage that we're able to do. Paired alongside as well of Sarah Jane Smith, who has also made her way into this deck as well. The two of them are going to be some of the stronger backbone pieces as this historic synergy starts compiling itself throughout gameplay. Other good doctors in here is going to be the sixth. This one, as you cast your first historic spell each turn, you get a non-legendary copy of it. So while that doesn't make them any more synergistic with the historic synergy cards that we have in this build, just having another non-legendary copy of any creature down in play is fantastic. We definitely want those as often as possible. The eighth Doctor is actually also a very good piece to have in here, as the 14th does a sort of mill thing with putting the doctors that he doesn't become a clone of in your graveyard. We're going to want as many pieces as we can to be able to get them back directly into the battlefield, and the eighth Doctor allows us to do that. The last really strong one, while not synergizing directly with Historic, is going to be the 10th, as this one is probably just overall the strongest Doctor of the ones that are all printed, simply due to the fact of his immense amount of mana reduction, more or less, that he gives you off of being able to just go 3 time counters onto anything. The amount of mana advantage you can gain off of just getting big dumb spells like other doctors and protection spells and other synergy pieces off of him very, very fast. And if this is a card that you get a clone of as the 14th Doctor, coming in with haste makes his ability extra great, as he can go swinging immediately. So what about that historic matters that we're talking about then? Well, true to its name of the Blast from the Past deck, a large portion of its build cared about just casting historic permanents just in general. So stuff like Day of Destiny, and Hero's Blade and Hero's Podium. These are just, in general, they have synergy and value to playing legendary creatures, and that's kind of what we're looking to do here. This is Blast from the Past pretty much through and through, but just with the additive of red, so that we can take advantage of having all of our other doctors in this pile of a Precon, or a Precon Mash-up, I guess I should say. The creatures we have in the build are all legendary, and generally they are all doctors or doctor's companions. We have 2 exceptions to that as well. Alistair the Brigadier is a legendary creature, but he's not a doctor or a doctor's companion, but his effect that he does of giving you soldiers every time you cast a historic spell, and then a attacks trigger of being able to boost everything you have equal to the historic permanents you have down in play, it was just too good of an opportunity to not include in here, as since we are trying to be a combat focused deck, that ability to be able to just smash and try to close out a game is fantastic. The other exception is actually not even a legendary creature either, but it is Displaced Dinosaurs. But again, just like Alistair, the historic pull that it has for casting these things, being able to turn any historic permanent you cast into a base power and toughness 7/7 dinosaur, in addition to its other types, is, because we are doing a combat focused deck, too good to pass up. So both of these friends have made their way into the deck, despite them not fitting the bill of either the 14th Doctor or Rose Noble. As described when talking about the 8th Doctor, we are going to want to try to have means to be able to get some of these cards back out of our graveyard as well, and fortunately some of these decks have had pieces for us to use, like Confession Dial, which allows you to give legendary creatures in your graveyard escape, which lets you recast them. Another piece that's able to pull back all the Doctors back from your graveyard is Gallifrey's Stands. Now, don't get caught up on the fact that this card does have a you win the game clause on it. Generally speaking, that is not going to happen. It'll be very cool when it does, and I'd love to hear from any of you who end up pulling it off. However, this is mostly here for the fact that it enters and brings back all your Doctors back to hand. But if you pull off a win with it, that's even better. Since we're pulling from just these precons themselves, we get to be able to use some of these varieties of cards that were printed into these decks that help synergize with the theme that they are doing exclusively. And some of that is going to be cards that directly say we go searching our library for Doctor cards, which is exactly what we want to do. The most synergistic ones we have is a couple of sagas called An Unearthly Child and The 11th Hour. Both of these do Doctor tutoring, and they are sagas, which, as described earlier, are historic permanents. So we can cast these into our synergy pieces and just keep that value compounding every single time we go. Other Doctor tutoring cards is going to be ones like the 5 Doctors and the Adventure of Twice Upon a Time. Both of these are just going to help us grab more Doctors out of our library, or in the case of the 5 Doctors, actually from graveyard. Time Lord Regeneration also acts as a Doctor tutor. This one does require you to already have one down in play, but the fact that you can cast this and turn a Doctor that is about to die into another Doctor is very, very cool. And it's don't sleep on that as potential like turn, especially the 14th Doctor. You target this on the 14th, let him die, and then get a new Doctor down in play, and then use one of these graveyard recursion pieces to get the 14th back either into your hand or back to the command zone or something like that. That's a really good play. As for being able to control down the board, as mentioned earlier, Masters of Evil does not add too much to this deck, as a large portion of that build was black, and black is actually not one of the colors that is going to be a part of this deck, but we get some of the cards in red and blue, and really, really good wraths in the forms of like Blasphemous Act is absolutely a great include from that deck. But if you were ever looking to sort of change this deck idea around, you could take the 14th Doctor and pair him off with a different companion that allows you to add black, and that could technically bring you up to a 5-color build if you ever wanted to take this deck idea and add it together with more pieces directly from Masters of Evil. One of the really good suites of cards that we're able to throw into this mashup together is the reprints that were included in these precons as well, and especially in this removal and as we roll into ramp and mana rocks as well. So we've got some classics in here like Swords to Plowshares, Path to Exile, Grasp of Fate, Farewell, and Time Wipe as some general purpose wraths and spot removal, while also being able to have some really, really good protections pieces in here like Lightning Greaves, Heroic Intervention, and probably the best new card that came out of Doctor Who, Everybody Lives. The one-shot effect that basically makes it that no one can win the game at that opportunity. Everything gains indestructible, everything gains hexproof, no one can lose life. It's great. It's a very fun little piece to hold up. Unfortunately, though, where this deck can falter is when it comes down to counterplay. While the Masters of Evil deck did have some varieties of counterspells, they were either things that were a little too narrow or they cared too much about what the Masters of Evil deck was doing in and of itself. So unfortunately, that then means that this Precon mashup pretty much just gets reverse the polarity as its only counterspell, but that is why we are running as much as we have of spot removal and wraths, so that while yes, we're not going to be able to counter as many cards, we do have general answers to things as they land down in play. So if you were looking to maybe take pieces from these Precons and then make additions of yourself to kind of spice it up a little bit, I would suggest adding a bit more as far as counter spells into this deck. But Where this deck lacks in counter magic, it makes up for in mana acceleration and the mana base itself. As again described, since we are combining 4 decks together into one, we have the full selection of especially lands, which these decks had an incredible selection of non-basic land support to be able to get to this 4-color build. As we just described, as you remember, this deck is kind of based around the Bant half of the Precons themselves with the additive of red, and that is taken into account for when it comes to our mana rocks and the land base, as generally speaking, we just want to try to get green, white, and blue, but then just have access to red as we need it. So your Mana Rock classics, things like Arcane Signet, Soul Ring, a variety of talismans, and Thought Vessel are all joined up by the new card Sonic Screwdriver as some of our mana rocks that help us get all the colors we need, especially these talismans just being colorless when we need them to be, and then the specific off colors for some of the stuff we need to cast at just the cost of a damage is very, very handy. We are also playing the green ramp pieces like Farseek and 3 Visits, and these ones we are playing specifically because the mana base has a variety of non-basic lands that have types on them that we can fetch out. And so then as we go ahead and talk about these lands, yes, we are playing the varieties of typed duels that are in here, so the ones like Scattered Groves that can cycle, and then we also have the Zendikar check ones that want you to have basics in play to come in untapped, but those also have a dual type on them as well, so we can grab them out with pieces like Farseek and 3 Visits, things like that. As far as being able to have all of our colors available, we do get a Command Tower, an Exotic Orchard, the new Gallifrey Council Chamber, which is just going to be absolutely perfect to have any single time you're looking to cast a Doctor. Path of Ancestry then makes up the variety of Wooburg lands that we're going to be playing. Outside then of these duels and Wooburg style lands, the majority of our remaining non-basics are made up of Snarls and Horizon lands, and some other varieties of check lands. So the ones that check to see if you have a land of its shared type, then it comes in untap. The Snarls that want you to reveal a land of its shared type from your hand, or the Horizon lands, which are kind of like the talismans that they ping you as you use their colors, but then also can sacrifice themselves for a card. And that is the Precon Mash-up for which Doctor? This Doctor. And overall, this deck is very, very neat. Being able to have pieces and effects pulled from a variety of precons joined up all together to a unified theme of play legendaries, play historic, and go smash with them, while having a card draw engine and essentially a clone in your command zone is very, very neat. Is this the greatest synergy pile there is? Unfortunately, no, because just as these precons stand, the different doctors in their different colors were sort of designed with different game mechanics in mind, but generally, because most of the ones we are playing came from the Bant historic deck, there is some relatively good pull from here, and you can actually get into some real, like, wombo combo shenanigans of having different doctors from different decks be down all at the same time. 10th, as an example, gives you cards into Suspend, while 13th wants you to be playing Paradox, which is casting cards from anywhere other than your hand. That would include a suspended card. Or, if that suspended card is a legendary creature, you're now synergizing with the historic pieces from Blast from the Past. So, you can get into situations where things are working together, but for the most part, the doctors don't really play well together. And obviously that was by design, because every single one of them is slightly different in how they were and how they acted as far as their television appearances go. But when thrown together into this deck here, trying to be a Legendary Matters theme of combat and drawing cards and doing all of their synergies together, you can kind of sometimes end up with a little bit of like conflicting interests of these cards, but that's what makes it random and chaotic, you know? You might end up with the half of the deck that cares about Suspend, where you may then also care about having artifacts down in play, or just casting historic spells. And it's wild, it's chaotic, it can be tons of fun, and really, it's just a really fun pile to play, and especially because these precons had a very, very good variety of mana acceleration and non-basic lands. Even with this being a 4-color build, you will have access to all of the colors you need to play. You basically will never really be out of the game. You'll always have something to do, whether it's from your command zone, or from your other doctors, or the varieties of other spells that this deck has to offer for gameplay. And ultimately, if you're just looking for a very clean, simple, fun 4-color, do the hit you hard with some of the greatest Time Lords of the multiverse, you can't really go much better off than with the Doctor Who Precon Mash-up. So thank you so much for watching this episode. I hope you enjoy, and maybe you'll go out and build this deck yourself. Leave your comments down below on what you would add to this deck to be able to spice it up even more. And we will see you all next time, Lord, in the next episode of Precon Mash-up. Take care, everybody.